Hello, students. We are going to be dealing with chapter 29 today, which has to do with interventions. And before we go over the objectives, I'm going to uh, give you a working definition of an intervention. So, an intervention is an orchestrated attempt by one or more people, usually family and friends, to get someone to seek professional help with an addiction or some kind of traumatic event or crisis or other serious problem. So, knowing that, um, we are going to be dealing with understanding the concept of intervention and characteristics of the process and the common forms of intervention. And we're also going to be looking at reviewing the history, mechanics, and ethical considerations of intervention, the intervention movement. So, in the definition and history of intervention, we can say that an intervention is an organized effort by those who are part of the person's environment to help break down through the walls of denial and rationalization regarding addictive behaviors, and is often supervised by a trained professional. The goal of the intervention is to get an agreement for the individual to seek immediate treatment. So this was once believed that a person that a person with a substance use disorder would have to hit rock bottom to be receptive to treatment. This is no longer true, and so it was thought that this mindset was necessary for persons to realize that they had a substance use disorder and needed help. But the whole concept changed in the 1980s, and in 1980 that view changed and newer models were considered. So the idea is that you don't have to be at your wit's end to the last boat or whatever, at the bottom, hit bottom, to be able for the family and friends to have a concern and meet with a specialist and help them create an intervention setting to help a loved one break through their denial and accept going to treatment. So, characteristics and mechanisms of intervention. Characteristics of intervention depends on the setting. In other words, you're going to pick an interventionist that's going to help you take the client to a particular program. And so that's what it means, that it depends on the setting and the individual involved, like what the situation is involving, the environment, the daily life thing, the drug of choice. One form is a brief alcohol intervention approach used by many physicians. So many times a physician may be in their office and someone walks into them and is a regular client and they know that they have a problem, and then the physician leads the intervention approach to the client about getting help. Another form can be a spouse who gives an ultimatum, or a friend, that they say, okay, well, if you don't get treatment, I'm leaving, or you're out, or whatever. And that's considered an intervention. An intervention is some effort made to get through the denial system and get them into the client to agree to go to treatment. Or a friend who expresses concern about friends' substance abuse. Where the friends get together, or one friend, and they say, I really am concerned about you. I need to discuss this with you, and due to our trust and friendship, etc., etc., and then they get to the problem and the person decides to go to treatment. A supervisor or employer might stipulate that they need to seek treatment if they are to remain employed. So this also is an intervention where your boss says, either get help or you're out of here. The goal is to have the person agree to enter treatment immediately, and interventionists have specific referral in place. So an interventionist is a professional who is trained in these kinds of settings and has all the resources, information, knowledge, and educational basis to be able to advise family and friends how to set up the setting and also how to interact with the client. They need to have everything in place in case the client says yes, because that's the objective. So they also must have an identified sanctions ready to put in place if a person refuses. So they need to be able to discuss actual consequences for a person's behavior if they choose not to go into a setting. And that's really hard because most of the time families are codependent or enablers. All right, so the first step in arranging for an intervention is to find a rehab interventionist. This is staging a drug or alcohol intervention for a loved one with an addiction problem is often the most effective way to get them into treatment and recovery. A substance abuse intervention is a gathering of close friends and family who, with the help of a professional interventionist, meet with their loved one with a goal and intent of convincing them to enter a drug or alcohol treatment program right then and there. So you can see that this situation is going to be a landmine for ethics also, because persons planning on an intervention process are advised to consult with an attorney as to the specific laws that apply in geographic location, like your state and federal law, as to what you can and can't do, what you can threaten with, because many times it seems to the client that you're threatening them, harassing them, and clients have rights. So if an individual should express a desire to leave, they should be allowed to do so and not held against their will or feeling like they're being held against their will. The courts hold that professionals must offer informed consent prior to client being introduced to an intervention process. We discussed about informed consent in the ethics section, and informed consent has to do with that the client is aware of what's going on, what the situation is, and that they are in agreement to that. And so the law says a person has the right to refuse recommended treatment. And we had said earlier also, not only is it an ethical challenge to put someone into treatment against their will, and the clients have rights now. And so the whole idea that a person goes in is going to create confrontation and a challenge, which are already barriers to treatment if you start on that role. And so the forms of intervention, providing services to clients who are ordered by the courts to undergo counseling. This practice has been referred to as coerced treatment, court-ordered treatment, mandated treatment, compulsory treatment, and this equals in their mind, in the client's mind, as seeing therapy as punishment. And the practice constitutes some form of legal sanction and some degree of involuntary counseling. In other words, that you need to know what the law is in this area, and if the law is telling you to do something, then remember that there are also strings attached to the law, and there's going to be some element of involuntary counseling, and we know what happens when people go against their will, and the resistance and the extra hoops you have to jump or go through to be able to get the client's trust and cooperation. Motivation is the key there in change. So this can lead to an ethical minefield, like I said earlier, because motivation is the key factor to change. And if you're having somebody else tell you to change and you're not wanting to change, you got your work cut out with you with that client. So it is motivation to change one's behavior, which involves a major lifestyle change, or is motivation to enter counseling as a gesture to alleviate an immediate aversive treat. So in other words, is the client really going to come in because they're motivated and they want to make a lifestyle change and get healthy again? Or is it because they're appeasing whoever's forcing them to do that? And so, in order to avoid going to jail or whatever, losing the wife, job, whatever it is, that they're going along with it, but they're not really invested in making the change. And so the forms of intervention could be a family intervention model, where the whole family goes to treatment, but the identified client is the substance use disorder person. But the other family members must participate also. Excuse me. And there's the court-mandated contingency management. There's a court-mandated involuntary treatment. There's the drug court, and there's employer-mandated treatment. So all these forms of intervention means that each one of these are going to be asking the person, forcing the person, or strong-arming the person into making a decision about whether they want help or not, and having the help already available. In the instance of courts, it's dictated. And the interventionist in the family is going to be the interventionist providing options based on what the client qualifies for, needs, and is motivated to participate in. But remember that in order for any of these to work, including mandated treatment, a person needs to be motivated to change internally. Okay, thank you. I also have included here 3 videos. They're all part of the same video, but it's part 1, part 2, and part 3. And it has a professional interventionist talking, and it's how to talk to a family member with an addiction. Please view that video. Thank you.